In this episode, we are moving into a topic that sounds familiar on the surface, but becomes far more important once you see how deeply it shapes the way an organization actually handles risk every day. Promoting a risk-aware culture through security awareness training is not just about teaching employees a few security rules and hoping they remember them during a busy week. It is about helping people across the organization develop habits of attention, judgment, and responsibility so that risk is noticed earlier, discussed more openly, and handled more consistently before it grows into real business harm. For a brand new learner, this matters because many organizations do not struggle only because they lack tools or policies. They struggle because people ignore warning signs, rush through decisions, assume someone else is responsible, or never connect their everyday actions to the larger security and risk picture around them. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A good place to begin is with the idea of culture itself, because culture is one of those words people use often without always defining clearly. In the risk context, culture is the pattern of shared attitudes, expectations, behaviors, and signals that show people what matters in the organization and how they are expected to act when they face uncertainty or pressure. A risk-aware culture is not a place where everyone is afraid to make mistakes or constantly suspicious of one another. It is a place where people understand that risk exists in daily work, know that their choices can affect the business, and feel responsible for noticing and responding to concerns rather than ignoring them. This means security awareness training is not meant to stand alone as a yearly educational event. It is meant to support a broader environment where secure and thoughtful behavior becomes normal, expected, and reinforced through repeated experience rather than treated as an occasional interruption. One of the biggest misconceptions beginners have is that awareness training is mainly about information transfer, as if the entire goal were simply getting employees to remember a set of security facts. Knowledge matters, of course, but culture changes only when knowledge starts influencing behavior, and behavior changes only when people see that the organization truly expects and supports different choices. A person may know that suspicious email requests should be questioned, yet still comply if the workplace culture rewards speed over caution and quietly punishes anyone who slows things down. Another employee may understand that sensitive information should be handled carefully, but still choose convenience if no one around them seems to treat protection as a real priority. This is why awareness training has to do more than explain rules. It has to help people connect those rules to real situations, understand why they matter, and believe that using good judgment is part of what the organization considers competent and professional behavior. A risk-aware culture depends heavily on making security relevant to ordinary work rather than presenting it as a separate world full of unfamiliar language and distant technical problems. Many training efforts fail because they speak in broad terms that do not match the decisions employees actually face. If a person in finance receives an urgent request to change payment details, if a manager is asked to approve access too quickly, or if an employee is unsure whether a document should be shared externally, those are the moments when culture shows itself. Training becomes much more powerful when it reflects those moments and explains the connection between a small decision and a larger organizational consequence. When people see how risk appears inside familiar business activity, they are far more likely to understand why the training matters. That relevance is one of the main bridges between awareness and culture, because people adopt habits more readily when those habits feel connected to the work they perform every day. Leadership plays an enormous role in whether awareness training actually promotes culture or simply produces completion records. Employees pay close attention to the signals leaders send, including what leaders emphasize, what behavior they model, what they overlook, and what they reward under pressure. If leaders click through required training and then openly dismiss security steps as obstacles to speed, employees will notice that contradiction immediately. If leaders talk about risk thoughtfully, follow the same rules expected of others, and support employees who raise concerns, the message becomes much stronger. This is important because risk-aware culture is shaped as much by observation as by formal instruction. Security awareness training can introduce expectations, but leadership behavior either gives those expectations credibility or weakens them. For a new learner, that means culture should never be viewed as something created only by the training team. It is created by the entire management environment, and leadership is often the clearest source of daily evidence about what the organization truly values. Another important principle is that people need psychological safety if training is supposed to support a healthier risk culture. In simple terms, that means employees must feel reasonably safe reporting mistakes, asking questions, raising concerns, and slowing down when something seems wrong. If the organization uses shame, ridicule, or fear as the main teaching tool, employees may become quieter rather than wiser. They may hide errors, avoid asking for clarification, or delay reporting suspicious activity because they worry more about embarrassment than about the risk itself. A mature approach understands that even well-trained people will sometimes make mistakes or encounter situations they do not fully understand. What matters is whether the culture encourages early recognition and honest communication. Security awareness training supports this by making reporting behavior normal and respectable, not awkward or risky. When employees feel they can speak up without being treated as the problem, the organization gains earlier visibility into weak signals that might otherwise remain buried until the damage becomes much larger. Training also becomes more effective when it is role-aware rather than one-size-fits-all. Not everyone in the organization makes the same kinds of decisions or faces the same kinds of exposure. A frontline employee may need practical guidance on data handling, suspicious communication, physical security, and when to escalate unusual activity. A manager may need training that emphasizes access approval, exception handling, reporting expectations, and how to reinforce good security behavior inside a team. Senior leaders may need more focus on fraud targeting, crisis decision-making, and the risks that come from setting unrealistic speed expectations without sufficient control. A role-aware approach promotes culture because it shows respect for how people actually work. It helps employees see security not as a generic message sent from far away, but as guidance that fits the choices they personally make. That fit matters because people are much more likely to internalize training when it sounds like it understands their environment rather than merely broadcasting standard warnings. Repetition and reinforcement are also essential because culture is built over time through patterns, not through single moments of instruction. People forget, attention drifts, threats evolve, business processes change, and the pressure of daily work can quickly push abstract lessons into the background if they are never refreshed. A strong program uses ongoing reminders, timely examples, manager reinforcement, and practical communication throughout the year rather than relying only on one annual lesson. This does not mean flooding employees with constant alarm or endless messages. It means reinforcing a manageable set of behaviors and expectations often enough that they remain visible in the working environment. In culture terms, repetition matters because it shows consistency. It tells people that this topic is not important only during audit season or only after a public incident. It tells them that careful handling of risk is a standing expectation. Over time, that consistency helps secure behavior feel less like a special task and more like part of how competent work is supposed to be done. The content of the training itself matters greatly, because poor content can weaken culture even when the program exists with good intentions. Training that is overly technical, overly generic, or overly dramatic often misses the mark because it either confuses learners or makes security feel remote from actual work. In contrast, strong content usually explains the logic behind expectations, uses realistic examples, and focuses on recognizable choices rather than abstract fear. Employees need to understand not only what the rule is, but why it exists and what kind of risk it is meant to reduce. That explanation helps people use judgment when they face a situation that is not identical to the examples in the training. A risk-aware culture benefits when employees can reason from principles instead of waiting for instructions that fit every detail perfectly. This is one reason simple, clear, scenario-based content often does more for culture than dense compliance-heavy material. The goal is to help people think better, not merely to prove that information was delivered. Reporting behavior is one of the strongest signals that a risk-aware culture is actually taking hold. When employees notice something strange and promptly report it, even when they are unsure whether it is serious, the organization gains time, visibility, and options. Early reporting can turn a potential major event into a manageable issue because someone spoke up before the problem spread. Security awareness training should therefore teach reporting as a normal professional act rather than as an extreme step reserved for obvious crises. Employees need to know what to report, how to report it, why quick reporting matters, and what kinds of events deserve attention even if they seem small. They also need evidence that reports are taken seriously. If people believe nothing happens when they raise concerns, then awareness training may succeed at teaching recognition while failing to produce the behavior the organization actually needs. Culture improves when reporting is expected, simple, and visibly respected rather than left vague or treated as a burden. Another part of promoting a risk-aware culture is helping employees understand that security is connected to business resilience, customer trust, and operational quality, not just to avoiding attacks. If training focuses only on threat language, some employees may come away thinking that security belongs mostly to technical specialists responding to criminals. That view is too narrow. Risk-aware culture is stronger when people understand that secure behavior also supports service continuity, reliable operations, privacy commitments, and the organization's reputation for competence. A mishandled document, a rushed approval, or an ignored warning sign can affect customers, contracts, financial performance, and leadership credibility even when the event does not look like a dramatic security incident. When employees see that connection, awareness training becomes more than a protective message. It becomes a message about professional quality and responsible stewardship. That broader framing helps culture because it allows more people to see themselves inside the mission rather than assuming security is someone else's specialty. Measurement matters as well, but measurement must be used carefully if the goal is culture improvement rather than simple compliance reporting. Counting completions is easy, yet completion alone does not show whether employees are becoming more thoughtful, more alert, or more willing to act responsibly. A stronger program looks for signs such as improved reporting, better question asking, fewer repeated handling mistakes, stronger manager reinforcement, or quicker escalation of unusual events. Even then, leaders have to interpret these signals thoughtfully. For example, an increase in reported suspicious activity may actually be a healthy sign that awareness is improving and employees feel safer speaking up. If leaders judge the program only by surface-level numbers, they may miss the deeper cultural change underway. A risk-aware culture is reflected in behavior patterns and organizational response, not just in training attendance. The purpose of measurement is therefore to learn whether the culture is becoming more alert, more open, and more disciplined, not merely whether the training system recorded enough completed lessons. It is also important to understand that awareness training cannot compensate for a poorly designed environment. If processes are confusing, access is excessive, workloads are unreasonable, and leadership constantly pressures teams to bypass control for speed, then even good training will struggle to create a healthy risk culture. Employees can only do so much if the surrounding system punishes careful behavior or makes secure choices harder than insecure ones. This does not mean training has little value. It means training works best when paired with clearer processes, better designed controls, realistic expectations, and leadership support that makes responsible action feasible in the middle of ordinary work. For CRISC learners, this is an important reminder that culture is shaped by systems as well as messages. A risk-aware culture grows more easily when people are taught well and also given an environment where using that training is practical, supported, and aligned with how the organization actually expects work to happen. Resistance is another reality that organizations should expect rather than pretend will never appear. Some employees may view repeated training as unnecessary. Some managers may see it as lost time, and some leaders may assume the organization's greatest problems are purely technical. Promoting a risk-aware culture means addressing that resistance with patience and clarity rather than simply repeating mandates louder. People are more likely to engage when they can see the relevance of the training, when examples reflect real incidents or realistic business scenarios, And when leadership explains that awareness is not about bureaucratic burden, but about reducing avoidable harm. It also helps when the program respects employees' time and intelligence instead of relying on trivial scare tactics or shallow content. Over time, resistance often decreases when people see that the training actually helps them make sense of real situations. Culture changes gradually, and some skepticism is normal, but thoughtful, relevant, and consistent effort can move the organization toward wider acceptance. When all of these ideas come together, promoting a risk-aware culture through security awareness training becomes much more than a learning requirement or a communication campaign. It becomes a sustained effort to shape how people think, act, report, and support one another when they encounter uncertainty in daily work. Strong training makes security relevant, role-aware, repeated, realistic, and connected to business purpose. Strong culture makes responsible behavior normal, reporting safe, leadership credible, and risk discussion more open and useful across the organization. For a new learner, the most important takeaway is that awareness training is valuable not because it fills people with facts, but because it helps build an environment where better choices happen more often and weak signals are noticed earlier. When that happens consistently, the organization becomes more resilient, more trustworthy, and far better prepared to manage risk before everyday decisions turn into avoidable business damage.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.